I just realized, fellas, that we need a new intro. I know I've been meaning to make one for the longest time, update the footage a little bit, but we need to update that bad boy to say brought to you by Blue Wire Pods, right?
Ooh, I like it. I like it.
Baby.
Right.
Official now. Started from the bottom. Now we're in the middle somewhere, I think. Welcome, everybody.
We on top.
We on top, baby, on top of the XFL world right now. Thank you for joining us here on YouTube. To everyone joining us live in the chat, thanks for joining us to this special live episode of XFL Chalk Talk, brought to you by Blue Wire Pods and Bet Online. If you haven't already, make sure before we get started, guys, follow the show at XFL Chalk Talk on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course YouTube. If you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell, give the video a like, all that fun, good stuff. We have a fun conversation here tonight, and I think we're going to have another one of these similar once more XFL players sign in the coming weeks. Yeah. I mean, right now, if you look at players that have signed, it was kind of, it all came at once, and now it's died because no one's going to be doing any type of signings. And that's for all free agents. I mean, you got guys like Cam Newton, Andy Dalton out there that haven't been signed. Nothing, I think, is going to happen until after the NFL draft. And then I think after the draft, you're going to see XFL players begin to keep signing with NFL teams. Mm-hmm. So we may have to revisit this maybe here at the end of summer. But we wanted to jump on. We wanted to well, first of all, we left it to a fan vote, right? So I think from now on, unless there's like hard breaking news, we're going to leave it up to you guys. We're going to give you options of what you want the show to be. We want you guys to kind of steer the show, and you guys voted to discuss players that we could potentially see coming into the XFL to replace players that have left for the NFL. So let's go ahead and get right into it, guys. I think when you want to start talking about these guys, we have to start with the quarterbacks, right? I mean, P.J. Walker was the face of the XFL. Jordan Ta'amu was the surprise underdog with all this upside guy that came out of nowhere quarterback in the XFL. And now they both have made that jump to the NFL, and congratulations to them. But the XFL moves on. We got to replace them, right? So I'm interested to see what you guys think when it comes to quarterbacks that are either already in the league that you think could jump in and fill that void, or guys that they're going to bring in from the outside, whether it's college or the NFL or CFL, whatever it may be. So, Kenny, why don't we go ahead and start with you? And I don't know if you guys want to do specific P.J. Walker, Jordan Ta'amu. I was just kind of lumping them in as quarterbacks, so you guys kind of handle this however you want. Mm-hmm. And as we go through this, through players, through positions, guys, in the chat, if you're watching this live, I want to hear your opinions as well on players that you think could come into the league and potentially fill these positions. So, Kenny, go ahead. When it comes to quarterback, who do you think could replace P.J. Walker and Jordan Ta'amu?
So I went with a guy who's kind of similar to P.J. Walker. Maybe not as athletic, but it's similar of build and stature. He's 5'11", 190 pounds, kind of that smaller frame. But this guy can absolutely sling it, and he played for a wide-open college and offense. And that's Mason Fine, the quarterback from North Texas. Big fan of this guy. I don't think he's going to get picked up in the NFL just due to his size limitations. And again, he's not quite as athletic as guys like Kyler or Baker. He doesn't kind of have that pedigree. So he's probably going to be a late round, if he's even drafted at all, kind of pick. But I think coming from a Seth Luttrell run offense, and also you got to remember his offensive coordinator for 3 years was Graham Harrell, who is now the OC at USC. But these guys are descendants of Mike Leach. Guys who just love to throw the ball all over the place, and I think he would fit perfectly in a Joan Jones run offense. I think he knows how to sling the ball 50, 60 times a game, and he's proven that he's a very, very credible quarterback.
Kenny loves North Texas, man. I've heard Kenny for 2 years talking about North Texas.
I don't know why. What is it about North Texas?
I don't know. He loves the mean green. He's a big.
A big reason I do is because of this quarterback, man. Mason Fine, the guy's a stud, man. He's an absolute stud. If he was even 6'1", he'd probably be a second, third round pick.
But guys, isn't that why we love Kenny? Because he's so random with everything. I mean, the teams he roots for, everything about Kenny is random, and that's why we love him here. I mean, he roots for the Jaguars, Wake Forest, UVA just to piss me off. Like, It's just all over the place. But yeah, I mean, Kenny, your love with North Texas is a little bit strange, but I mean, it's a good name. Gless, who do you have for a quarterback?
Yeah, so I got two guys. The first guy makes so much sense. I was glad that I stumbled across it. He had a fantastic senior year at Hawaii last year. 6'3", 215, and guys, guess what offense he ran in college?
Run and shoot.
Ran the run and shoot at Hawaii, the only Division I team that runs the run and shoot. So he is by far the most perfect quarterback to go into Houston to replace P.J. Walker, and that would be Cole McDonald.
You know what?
I'd love to watch him play in the XFL.
I love that guy.
Yeah, it's not a bad one.
Yeah, he's good. Plus, he's a white guy. He's a white guy with dreads, which is even cooler.
That is true.
I know, dude. He'd be a marketer's dream. Can you imagine? I mean, he's like Colt Brennan with dreads. I mean, that's what he is, size-wise, everything. Love it. So that's my first one. I think I think is an brainer. They think he might get picked in the 7th round, but guys, I got to be honest with you. The NFL draft is stacked with quarterbacks, and there's a ton of them. There's a ton of them, and there's so many free agent quarterbacks out now. I think there's going to be a lot of really good quarterbacks that don't get drafted and that may even be able to get on practice squads because there's only so many spots available. So kind of keep that in mind as we talk about some of these college guys.
I made a list, Glessner. Gless, I made a list of some college guys. Is your second guy a college guy or is he a pro guy?
No, my second guy's a college guy.
Oh, then you go ahead. Who's your second guy?
I'm going to go ahead. And Pastel and Riley are going to absolutely hate this one. I got to go with my guy, Bryce Perkins. Got to go with Bryce Perkins, UVA. He's athletic, great leader. I would love to see him with the ball in his hands. And we already know, guys, mobile quarterbacks succeed in the XFL. Yeah. We saw perfect fit for the league.
You just love trolling me, all of you.
I do.
No, he's actually on my list too, Gless. I also have guys like Kelly Bryant. I think he would be a great fit.
Kelly Bryant's a great one.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's projected to be drafted, if at all. But he popped into my mind. Shea Patterson, who obviously his skill set doesn't really translate into what the NFL currently is. And he just didn't have the success that I think people were hoping he would have at Michigan. But I think he's a guy that I could potentially see in the XFL. So, yeah, and then I had Bryce Perkins as well. Despite, where he went to school, it makes a lot of sense with the quarterbacks that we've seen succeed in the XFL. And I don't want to necessarily say that you have to be a mobile quarterback to succeed in the XFL, but we've just kind of seen these guys that have been able to move around, extend plays, succeed early on. Josh Johnson's another one of those guys that can extend plays. Pastel, before I get into some of my other names, who is a guy that you we're looking at for quarterback to fill these two gaps?
So I'm going to say, realistically speaking, it's going to be Connor Cook replacing P.J. Walker. I think he's the natural replacement because he's his backup, and he was the second overall pick in the draft. So I think you got to give him the opportunity. I mean, if you think about it, going into the training camp, they were both getting an equal amount of reps. So it was almost Connor Cook beating out P.J. Walker. So for all we know, he could be the second best quarterback in the XFL.
That's a good point.
And then going down to replace Jordan Ta'amu, it's the same exact thing. Tyler Heinicke. I mean, it was the same thing. It was a camp battle. And it makes you wonder now how these guys were allocated and drafted because the two best quarterbacks that got picked up in the league had the best backups. So maybe the XFL's on to something there as far as replacing the natural incumbent to players that might go on to the NFL. But as far as a college talent that I would like to see is Khalil Tate from Arizona. He struggled the last year and a half, but 2 years ago he was a phenomenal quarterback, phenomenal stats. It's what we just said. He's an athletic quarterback. I think he's just touched his potential. I think Glesser completely disagrees with me on this, so I'm going to let him debate me on this. Go ahead, Gless.
I just thought he underwhelmingly performed at Arizona this last year and a half, under Kevin Sumlin, who take quarterbacks of his skill set and make them Heisman Trophy winners. So I just don't think he's very good. Yeah, I think he's an athletic guy, but I just don't think he's very good.
I don't either. Really the guy had an incredible 6-game stretch at the end of his sophomore year, and then absolutely stunk his junior and senior year. He was terrible. He was awful. He got benched for somebody a couple times this year. I don't know. I don't think he can throw at all. Like I don't think he can play quarterback at the professional level. Yeah, he's an athletic freak, but he might be at a different position come next year at a professional level. Not quarterback.
So I had a list of some guys. I had a list of some guys that I thought could maybe fill the void, but it is interesting, Pastel, that you bring it up, and I think it's a valid point. Like the guys that have the inside track right now are the guys that are currently on the teams. If they return to the XFL, you're going to have to go into camp thinking that Connor Cook and Taylor Heinicke are going to have the edge for those jobs, and I don't think either team would be in a bad spot by any means. I mean, we debated on this show, and we were split 2-2 for the St. Louis job between Heinicke and Ta'amu. And then in Houston, I mean, and I'll admit I was one of these guys. Like, we thought Connor Cook was going to win, or most people thought Connor Cook was going to win the job. Most people thought Connor Cook should win the job. And that obviously turned out to be – I know, Pastel.
I just had to say it.
I had to say it. Grinning over there. He couldn't resist.
I saw him grinning too. I saw him grinning too. Pastel's the quarterback whisperer after the PJ Walker call, so we have to listen to everything Pastel says from now on about quarterbacks.
Although you guys jumped on board with that,
I'm pretty sure you wanted Taylor Heinicke to play over Jordan Ta'amu, though. So,
and we don't know what he can do yet. So hopefully we find out next year, and you guys will see that.
I'm sorry, Pastel is the quarterback whisperer. I'm sorry, who ended up last in all our quarterback rankings? Who accurately picked that? Me. Thank you.
Who was that?
What?
Wait, what do you mean?
Cardell Jones. He finished.
Oh,
Cardell Jones. Cardell Jones finished dead last in the rankings for everybody, and I'm the only one who picked that. I think everybody else had him like second.
That was only half. We're only halfway through the season. There was still a whole half a season to play.
Yeah, he had his team in first place.
Oh, here we go.
Right? He just struggled on the road.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah, he struggled on the road.
And at home where he got benched.
And at home for one play. Anyways,
well, Riley, real quick before we go on quarterbacks, I think it should also be known that these quarterbacks necessarily don't have to replace PJ Walker and Jordan Ta'amu on the roster. So if you look in like New York for an example, or for example, Tampa Bay, heck, you could make a case for DC. You can make a case for Seattle. I mean. All of these teams could potentially be looking for starters. Yeah, there were some bright spots for, BJ Daniels. Occasionally, Cardell Jones had 2 good games and 3 not so good games. Luis Perez was 2-0, but it was very underwhelming 2-0. So you could see these guys be starters, but they would be starters for other team, not necessarily replacing the St. Louis and the Houston starter.
Yeah, it's a good point. It'll be interesting to see who comes back for the second year coming in, whether guys decide to go in a different direction with their careers or guys just decide, I don't want to do this anymore. So it'll be interesting to see who actually returns to these rosters and how they're going to mix it up. I wrote some names down that I want to hear your guys' opinions on. So number one is, I think we know my love affair with Brett Rippon. If you've been watching this show or listening to this show from the beginning, you know that I've been a big Brett Rippon guy. And he was brought onto the Broncos practice squad. I think he was even elevated at times. I think he spent most of the year on the practice squad. He signed a futures contract, but, with the draft coming up and training camp, some of these guys we mentioned may be on current NFL rosters. That does not mean that they necessarily don't have a path to the XFL. There's a lot of pieces that still need to fall into place. Going into the next NFL season and into February to the XFL season, when it comes to the NFL draft, making room, and then obviously training camps, are they going to bring in other free agents for competition? Like there's a lot of things that need to be sorted out. So we may be talking about a guy who's a free agent right now. He may be on a team, come next month. There may be a guy that's like Brett Rippon who's currently on the Broncos roster, but he may get cut. We don't know. So right now, I think it's a lot of speculation, but Brett Rippon's a guy that I've been a huge fan of just because he's a young guy with a talented arm. Like this dude has a cannon. And I think, not necessarily, and it kind of goes off what you said, Gless, not necessarily for the style of play in St. Louis and Houston, but DC, man, he would be such a perfect fit in DC. And I said this way back. What, Kenny? What?
You took the words right out of my mouth, man. I was gonna say a Rippin comes back to DC.
Oh, Rippin back in DC,
title.
but just what he brings in terms of his attributes, man. A guy with a big arm. Like, what does Pep Hamilton's offense revolve around? He likes to push the ball deep. He likes the 5, the 7-step drops. He likes play action. I mean, Brett Rippin can move a little bit. I mean, he's not gonna he's not gonna burn you by any means, but he can move around in the pocket. Yeah, he's not gonna wow you with his elusiveness, but he can still, he can run the bootleg, he can run off play action, and he can get the ball downfield. He had the highest velocity in terms of arm strength when he came out a year ago, into the NFL Combine. So this dude can fling it. I think he would be a perfect fit in DC if they're looking to bring in another quarterback. Then you have guys like Chad Kelly. Kenny, I know your love for Chad Kelly. I think he could fit into one of these slots in Houston or St. Louis, depending on his style of play. So I know that it's funny because we were talking about Chad Kelly last year when he was, fighting with PJ Walker for that spot with the Colts. And we all thought that PJ Walker was going to win it. And then Chad Kelly ended up staying. And now we'll see how it plays out in Indianapolis if Chad Kelly is still on the roster. But if he's not, I could see him being another possible solution for either one of these teams.
You don't bet against my boy Swag Kelly, okay? That guy bounces back from everything. He's like Teflon Don. He comes to the XFL, dude. Swag Kelly in the MVP next year if he comes to the XFL.
Oh,
that's all I'm gonna say. That's my guy. That is my guy. By the way, Gless, could you imagine Brett Rippin coming to DC next year on the 20th anniversary of their last Super Bowl? Or no, 30th. Their 30th anniversary of the last Super Bowl win. 90 of his uncle. And then he takes DC to an XFL title.
The stars are aligning. The stars are aligning, Kenny. It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
I hope it happens.
I want to hear a debate. What about Jake Browning?
Look at you feeding the fire. Actually, I think he signed a futures contract, so
that doesn't matter though. Like I mentioned, it doesn't necessarily matter.
I mean, do we want quarterbacks who can only throw the ball 30 yards down the field in the XFL?
I mean, what does Seattle have to lose at this point?
That's not factual.
Wait, this is a legit question, though. Would you rather take who is currently on Seattle's roster, or would you rather take Jake Browning?
Ooh.
You 100% take Jake Browning. It's not even close.
I'd take.
When's the last time Washington's had a good NFL quality starter in the NFL?
Dude, hold on. Timeout one. You're gonna feel really. You're going to be really stupid when you say this. So do you understand that the University of Washington has had more starting quarterbacks in the NFL than any school, Division I school? Did you know that?
Ooh. Did you pass out?
Coming in hot.
Lester's getting defensive.
Drop it. Drop it.
I know recently Keith Price sucked. I know Jake Locker was a bust. I know Jacob Eason is going to be a bust.
Jacob Eason is going to be a bust. He stinks, coach. Stinks. He stinks. And my Skins are going to take him, too. I hate him.
I've been hearing that I've been hearing the Patriots really like Jacob Eason.
Yeah, if they like a guy who has nothing but a strong arm and can't move. Yeah.
But what about Jake Browning?
What? Well, I mean, why not Jake Browning? I mean, look, the Vikings were willing to keep him on the practice squad and offer him a futures contract. It means they like him, they like his makeup, they like his talent level. He's behind Kirk Cousins. I mean, better than a lot of the other prospects that are out there. I mean, he's getting snaps in practice, so I think it could be a decent fit to see what he could do. I don't think he's going to be an all-star. I don't think he's going to blow the doors off the XFL. But I mean, I think you'd be kidding if you think he's going to be worse than Matt McGloin. I mean, my goodness.
Yeah. No, that's a fair point compared to Matt McGloin. That's a fair point, dude. I gotta say, I'm impressed you dropped that knowledge.
Boom.
Right off the bat like that. Pastel got roasted. That was pretty good.
Thanks for circling back. Thanks for circling back on that, Kenny.
He's fueling the fire. He's fueling it right now.
We're gonna have one of those pastel Kenny
I
brawls here soon.
I wanted to stand up for my school. That's what I wanted to stand up for. So there you go.
Which is funny because the next guy I'm probably going to talk about is a Wake Forest prospect, which is going to kill me because I actually like the guy, but I'll wait.
It'll be interesting though when you look at the Raiders situation, because they're linking the Raiders to some of these quarterbacks as well. If the Raiders draft a quarterback, in the coming NFL draft, what's going to happen to DeSean Kaiser? Is he going to make this roster? Oh my gosh, Nathan freaking Peterman. If Nathan Peterman comes to the XFL, I'm going to be salty.
He stinks.
That would not be good. He's terrible.
But Gruden has this love affair with him, though.
Yeah, I think Gruden just likes the idea of being able to kind of rehab his career, kind of be known as like the quarterback guy, like almost like what's his name in Kansas City. Well, gosh, why am I blanking on the head coach's name in Kansas City right now?
Andy Reid.
Andy Reid.
I think he kind of wants to be in that category of like, you can take a quarterback, essentially from nothing to something, and then but that's a great thing to have, because now quarterbacks are going to want to come play for you. So if he can rehab Nate Peterman's career, then yeah, job well done, Gruden.
Yeah, Thornbush mentioned it. So like if you look at Kaiser, Peterman, or Glennon, if they bring in even if they don't bring in another quarterback, bringing in Kaiser, what do they have, 4 now? To go with Carr. So I could see one of those 3 being like, they could get picked up by other squads, by other teams, or they could go the route of the XFL. But if they draft another guy, that's probably 2 guys that are going to get let go. And I think Kaiser's definitely one of those. And he was a guy that I was kind of looking at last year as a potential target for the XFL.
Yeah, Kaiser was great at Notre Dame. The problem was it sounded like he left a little early, because you remember when he declared for the draft, Brian Kelly came out and like literally told the media, he goes, DeSean Kaiser's not ready for the NFL. Flat out said his starting quarterback was not in the NFL. We're ready to play professional football. So if he really wasn't, he really hasn't had a chance to develop. He's had a couple spot starts here or there, but he definitely hasn't had the reps to develop. So yeah, the XFL would be a great avenue for DeSean Kaiser.
So before we move on, does anyone else have a quarterback that they feel? Pastel, you mentioned somebody from Wake Forest. Is it worth our time?
So I was going to say that's for a Dietrich Nichols, the cornerback.
For a different position. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm psyched about the tight ends that I have to fill the void for Donald Parham. I don't know if you guys looked up some tight ends.
I did. I got one.
All right, Gless, who's yours?
I'm going to go Ryan Hewitt from tight end U at Stanford. Play, he actually, I think he played for the Bengals for 3-4 years. Guy, he got cut from the Titans last year and never got re-signed. Again, tight end U, I think he'd be a great fit in the XFL.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned him, because I always liked him when he was with Cincinnati. He was a tight end, kind of that H-back kind of guy. Like you put him wherever you want on the field, and he actually just a very good football player. I think we tried re-signing him, but then Tennessee picked him up, and then just didn't have that good of a year and got cut. But I like it, Glessner. He's a really good football player. I think he'd do really good in the XFL.
That's a good.
Did you have someone?
Cool. I had Adam Shaheen. He's currently with the Chicago Bears right now. He was a second-round pick in 2017, but the guy is 6'6", 260 pounds. He had 129 receptions and 26 touchdowns at Ashland University. Like, he's an absolute workout warrior. He's a stud. He's got all the size, but he came from a very small school. He's very raw, but he's in that sense, he's kind of like Donald Parham. Raw, super athletic, has size that is rarely seen at the tight end position, especially from a pass catcher. This is a guy who could easily drop down, dominate, and then turn that into a higher spot, because I just don't think he gets the reps with Chicago. That's the problem.
Yeah. So I have 2 guys. My first is going to be a Hokie, and he was actually drafted in the XFL to the Wildcats, and he ended up not playing for the Wildcats, but Bucky Hodges, Pastel. This guy. So
that's a good one.
Bucky Hodges is a very interesting story, and I think it kind of goes along with what you're saying, Kenny. Guys leaving too early. So, I don't even know what happened, but after his sophomore season, Bucky Hodges had a second-round draft grade on him. He was Mel Kiper's second-ranked tight end that year going into the draft, and then his junior year, things just it didn't fall apart. He didn't have a bad season. He actually, I think, increased in terms of his touchdowns and his yardage, but his draft stock fell, and he got picked up in the 6th round to the Vikings and just kind of went back and forth between teams, never could really get on the field. But I'm not giving up on this guy because he's only 24 years old still, despite, being in the league for, I think, 2 years now. He left after his junior year, probably should have stayed through his senior year. But Bucky Hodges is a guy, and when I look at Donald Parham specifically, I mean, Donald Parham was more of a wide receiver than he was a tight end. I mean, he was split out in the slot way more than he was lined up, on the end as tight end. So I'm looking at a guy like Bucky Hodges could come in. He's got for a tight end, he's got some elusive speed. He's got good hands. So I think he would be a good fit if he decided to come back and try out the XFL. The second guy, I don't know if you guys know this name or not. He scored a couple touchdowns in the NFL. Ali Cox for the Colts. Ali Cox is a freaking beast. So this dude played basketball at VCU. He's the team's all-time leader in field goal percentage. He was an absolute monster at center. He's only like 6'7", 6'8". I say only 6'7", 6'8", like that's not that big. For a center, maybe not so much. But, dude, this guy is an athletic freak of nature. And I'm not going to say he's like Antonio Gates where did Tony Gonzalez play basketball too before he came to the –
Yep.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yep.
He did.
He's
not. So did Jermaine not Gresham. Graham.
Yeah, Graham. So I'm not going to say he's going to be like one of those guys, but this dude has the athletic ability. He reminds me so much when I watch Donald Parham. He reminds me there's a very similar build, similar in terms of their athleticism, their run after the catch ability. And he just, like I said, he played college basketball. So he hasn't had much time, to play football. So I think the XFL could be a freaking perfect opportunity for this dude to get some reps and really kind of take over the league, because he would be a matchup nightmare for linebackers and defensive backs in this. Like, nobody could cover him. It would be just like watching Donald Parham. Ali Cox needs to be in the XFL. He might, and it's a crowded room.
That's a good one.
It's a crowded room for the Indianapolis Colts. I don't know if he's going to make the team or not, but if he doesn't make the team, he should definitely consider a route to the XFL. So let's go ahead. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball. And Savon Walker, Pastel, he was your defensive MVP in our mid-season / now final season award show. Have you targeted anyone, or has any of you other guys targeted anyone to kind of fill that void for the New York Guardians and replace Savon Walker?
Yeah. So kind of like Savon Walker, he kind of jumped on late in college, changed positions. It kind of took him a little bit of time to get used to this position, which is why I think he did so well in the XFL. He finally grew into that position and gained some weight. So another player that I'm looking at, somewhat similar, is Tyler Clark from University of Georgia. He's a 6'4", 300-pound defensive tackle. But honestly, he was very, very inconsistent in college. I think 2 years ago, had some really big games, showed up for some of these big games. But then when the spotlight wasn't on him, he didn't show up. So I look at players like that like if you could just light a fire underneath him, he's going to excel. So I see him kind of being like an undrafted free agent in the draft, which is why I think he will go to the XFL. And if the right coach can get a hold of him, I think Tyler Clark from Georgia could be a stud in the XFL.
Good one. It's a good one.
So I couldn't go a show without picking a homer pick. I picked Duke Ejiofor. He's a defensive end from the Houston Texans. He went to Wake Forest, obviously, concerns a homer pick. But he was a 6th round pick. He hasn't really been able to break into the rotation for Houston. They've kept him around because he's got talent, but it's more of like an upside more than what's credible. His last 2 seasons at Wake, he had 34 tackles for losses, 17.5 sacks. He was an absolute monster his junior and senior year. Made all ACC teams. Was number 2 in forced fumbles in that time frame. The guy just absolutely put up numbers at Wake, but for some reason he just hasn't been able to put it together in the NFL. And I don't know if that's because of consistency or just lack of opportunity. But a guy who puts up those kind of numbers and has the size that he has, 6'4", 275, I think could definitely make some noise in the XFL.
Nice.
I like that. I like that one. I'm going to go kind of similar when we talk about size. I'm going to go with a guy called named Demontre Moore. He was an All-American out of Texas A&M back in 2013. Now he's kind of bounced around the NFL. I think he's been with about 5 or 6 different teams. Most recently with the 49ers, but was really on injured reserve and didn't play a whole lot. But guys, back in the AAF, he was actually one of the best defense players in the league. 22 tackles, 7 sacks, 1 fumble recovery. This guy could really be the pass rushing kind of specialist that we want to see to replace the Savon Walker. So I like Demontre Moore.
So I was kind of looking through practice squads, 3rd string, 4th string guys on NFL rosters. And a guy that really stood out to me was Daniel Wise. If you're a Cowboys fan, you may know the name. He spent most of last season on the Cowboys practice squad. He signed a futures contract. He may have been waived by the Cowboys. I'm not sure if he's still on that contract or if he's been waived. But regardless, when I looked at the measurables, he literally was like Savon Walker, a little bit undersized for a D tackle, 6'3", 285. But the dude has a high motor. He was a 2-time first-team All Big 12 at Kansas. He totaled 17 sacks throughout his career, and he was one of those guys that really, tore it up in the preseason. Take from that what you will. I know it's preseason, but for guys like him, that's where you have to perform, and he did just that in his last preseason game. He had 5 combined tackles, 2 sacks. He was able to make the squad on the practice squad. So I think Daniel Wise, and another thing I love about him, and this is kind of, I tried to as much as I could not go with retreads or veteran guys. I try to look for guys that are younger that really need the game footage or the game tape. He's only 24 years old. So I think that's another
I like that.
Great sign for him if he decides to take that route. And if he doesn't make the Cowboys roster this year, make that jump to the XFL.
Well, and here's the thing about preseason, Riley. A lot of the guys who play in preseason on NFL games are guys who play in the XFL. Those are your basically last, 15, 20 guys that get cut from the active roster. So him showing out in preseasons, that's a great sign that he could compete well at a high level in the XFL.
Yeah, so if any Cowboys fans are out there watching live, I'd like to hear your perception of him in the chat, what you thought of him if you watched him in the preseason for the Cowboys, and if you think he'd be a good fit in the XFL. So we're going to move on to our next player, but before we do, we want to make sure that we get this in here and let you know that we are brought to you by BetOnline with currently no NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball, and of course XFL. You might think there's nothing to bet on. Well, my friends, you would be wrong. Our exclusive partner still has hundreds of sports, events, games to wager on. Or let them bring Vegas to you with their online casino and blackjack. They're open 24 hours a day. It's all online. You don't have to wear a mask. You don't have to go out in public. It's all online, my friends.
Nice.
Including their $750,000 poker series. If you're into prop bets and entertaining betting, you can bet on basically anything. It's crazy. Survivor, Big Brother, American Idol, stock prices, what the weather's going to be. It's freaking ridiculous. It's crazy. You can make a bet on anything. Visit their website and join today and receive a 100% welcome bonus with your first deposit. And be sure to use the promo code BLUEWIRE. BetOnline, your online wagering experts. All right, guys. Now that we have that done, let's go ahead and move on to our next player. And I think we'll go with Dietrich Nichols. He was the first guy to sign from the XFL to the NFL. He was a standout cornerback for the Houston Roughnecks. He led the league in interceptions. So I'm interested to see who you guys picked to fill that void for the Houston Roughnecks. And guys, cornerback, this was a tough one for me because cornerback is such a position of need. It was hard for me to kind of try to project guys that even realistically could be available to the XFL because you guys see it in the NFL. There's so many injuries and there's just so much turnover from the cornerback position on the defensive side of the ball. I think that's probably the position that has the most turnover in my opinion. So I'm interested to see who you guys came up with for this one. Yeah,
Kenny, I think you're going to like this one. And you might need to help me pronounce his name as well. He's
Oh,
the
boy.
corner from Wake Forest. Asang Bassi, is that correct?
Isang Bassi.
Asang Bassi. So Kenny was telling me to watch Newman, the quarterback for Wake Forest last year. So I tuned into one of the football games, and one of the guys that stood out was this guy. And I'm like, okay. So I started looking at a little bit of his combine stats and things like that to see how he projects in the NFL. And it looks like he could be a late round pick, but I don't know if his size is going to enable that. Like he might get a camp looks. I'm reading he's like 5'8", 5'9", kind of a undersized guy. And I see somebody like that. He's a playmaker, always around the ball, great corner. But I don't know in the NFL in today's game when you need length and size against these bigger receivers, if he's going to stick on an NFL roster. So I can see somebody like him being an XFL guy and just be a star because he's a playmaker at the end of the day.
Yeah. What he was known for at Wake was, so we had two great corners, Amari Henderson and Isang Bassi. And Amari is more of kind of your traditional, he's going to lock down, have some pass breakups, and he's never really going to get beat. He's never really going to he was very fundamentally sound, wasn't the most athletic guy, but then Isang Bassi was the guy who's out there just taking gambles, making plays, like just out there letting it rip, man, throwing caution to the wind. So from a playmaker perspective, he's the guy you would want to go out for sure. I agree. I like that.
I tell you what, anybody who tunes into the show on a regular basis, Wake Forest gets so much run on this show.
It's ridiculous.
I mean, I want everybody to know that we are not paid by that university. I have not received one dime.
And that's going to bring us to our next ad. Wake Forest University.
Yeah, right. Our next ad.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Kenny,
You
I
looking to
love
get your
pick,
degree?
Yeah.
That's right.
Can you talk about your guy, though?
What's that?
Go ahead.
To talk about your guy that you picked up, I love it.
So I kind of went a little different, and he's kind of a Swiss Army knife. He plays a little bit of defensive, he plays linebacker. Griffin, who everybody will remember played for UCF on the undefeated team. He was their defensive MVP, and everybody's gonna remember the story. He was, he had a medical issue where they had to remove his hand, so he's only got one hand. The guy is an absolute athletic freak, sub 4.40, just out there. He can play a multitude of different positions on defense. He's got great ball skills. And again, really the reason he's fallen is because of his physical injuries, his physical health, and that's kind of scared some of the NFL, I think, talent away or teams away. But this guy would fit perfectly in the XFL. And to be honest, would be probably the most elite athlete in the entire league if he got into the XFL.
Hey, Kenny, correct me if I'm wrong, man. I thought Shaquem Griffin was the guy with his older brother that played for Seattle that had both of his hands working. It was his younger brother that played defensive line that had the hand issue that came out of UCF the next year.
No, that's Shaquille. Shaquille's the older brother and Shaquem is the younger brother.
Yeah, Shaquille's a stud for the Seahawks. He starts at corner.
Yeah, they both play for the Seahawks. Yeah. Yeah, they both play for the Seahawks, but no.
Yeah, but the older one's a
Shaquem
stud.
Shaquem is the younger one, the guy I'm talking about from UCF. Yep.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, he's a stud.
The guy I targeted, and like I mentioned, I had a little bit of trouble identifying. I have two guys. So if you look at Dietrich Nichols, Houston Roughnecks fans would know this. He was kind of he was a little bit of a do-it-all cornerback. He even played safety a little bit. One of his interceptions, I believe he was from the safety position, but he was one of those guys you could put on an island. He could play in the zone. He was athletic enough, though, to do a bump, do bump and run, get up on the line of scrimmage, and really get in the face of a wide receiver. And he really reminded me a lot when I watched the AAF of Keith Reeser. And I've talked about Keith Reeser before. He was the highest graded cornerback in the AAF. He was signed by the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, the one thing that really worries me about him, one, I don't know if he's going to make the Chiefs because he blew out his Achilles last year. It's a pretty devastating injury for a cornerback, especially a 31-year-old cornerback. So I'm not really sure what kind of Keith Reeser is going to come back and how effective he could be. But he led the AAF in interceptions with 3 before they folded 6 or 7 games into their season. He was, I think, third on the team in tackles behind Terrence Garvin and Reggie Northup. Oh, he was 4th behind Will Hill as well. But he is a guy that really reminded me when I watched Dietrich Nichols, he reminded me a lot of Keith Reeser with the Orlando Apollos. And if Keith Reeser can get back to what he was, which is a big question mark, and if he doesn't make the Chiefs because, especially at that position when you have an injury like that, it really sets you back, especially if you're coming in from an alternative or a alternative professional football league trying to make a spot. Blowing your Achilles out is not a great way to stay on the team.
No,
but he was a guy that I thought of. And then PJ Locke. He played a lot of safety. He's probably at this point more of a safety. He was he's kind of a tweener type of player, which is why I think he hasn't had the opportunity to really get a shot in the NFL. But in the XFL, I could see him. He actually was drafted, I believe, in the supplemental draft by the Tampa Bay Vipers, I think it was. He ended up not going there. I think he signed with the Denver Broncos. I'd have to go back and check. But he signed an NFL contract.
I think you're right, yeah.
Yeah, he signed an NFL contract. But he's the guy I could see as well. If training camp comes around and he's not making a roster, if he's making a practice squad, he'll have that decision to make. And I think he'd be a good alternative for either Dietrich Nichols or Askew Henry, who was safety for the Guardians, and they lost him. He actually was the guy I had slotted for him because he is a physical player. Now, he's undersized. He's only 5'11". He's about 185. He doesn't really have that speed that it takes to be able to cover guys one-on-one. That's why I think he kind of transitioned more to safety as his time went on at Texas. But this dude is a physical football player. Like, he is one of those headhunter, not to put that in a bad term, but he's one of those guys that looks for contact before he looks for the turnover. So the numbers, if you look him up, they may not jump out at you in terms of, what he did at Texas. But he is a guy that he's that guy back there that you're going to be scared of. When you hear footsteps coming, you're going to want to, wide receivers will think twice when they're running that seam route down the middle or that flag or that post. So he's another guy that I was targeting.
Yeah, I think you look at the defenses in today's league is you get that more of that rover type of guy, that safety that comes down the box a lot more.
Yeah.
So I think people like him, guys like Landon Collins, that played for the Giants and so forth, you're seeing more and more of those type of safeties. So I think there is a place for him in the league and hopefully the XFL to be that kind of star. Guys like that more or less.
I like it.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and move on to our final guy, Demarkus Gates, the linebacker for the Houston Roughnecks. We'll end with two Roughnecks here. But I targeted a couple of guys, and one guy, Gless, I'm interested to see what you think of him. My first guy is James Vaughters. Now, for those that followed the draft back in last October, Vaughters was actually drafted first overall in the defensive phase. I think it was phase 2. He went to the DC Defenders, and he actually got picked back up by the Bears. He's had this on and off thing with the Chicago Bears. They keep dropping him and bringing him back on. He actually I don't know what it is, but they keep bringing him back in. So he actually was elevated to the active roster. So I'm not really sure where he fits right now currently in terms of the Bears linebacking core, but he's a guy that he was slated to play in the XFL, drafted first overall. He's a playmaker. He's a turnover machine on the outside. I think he'd be a perfect fit for Gates, to replace Gates in Houston. And another guy who you've kind of seen around the NFL circles, I remember him mostly from Hard Knocks with the Browns, but I think most recently, Gless, he was with the Redskins, and Nate Orchard. He actually spent some time with the Dolphins as well. I think he's one of those guys that he spent time with all of our teams at one point.
He's one of those guys.
He's one of those guys. But
if you spend time with all 4 of our teams, that's not good.
Yeah,
and don't make it on a team.
But what I like about Nate Orchard is he's a high motor guy, but he just doesn't really have the physical attributes that it takes to, really make an NFL roster. He's always right on that cusp of a guy that could make the squad or not make the squad, but he's a high motor guy. And he clearly loves the game because he just won't go away. He's just finding ways to make it on a roster, even if he's only there for a month or so. But Nate Orchard was another guy that I target at that outside linebacker position that the XFL could target.
I really like your James Vaughters pick, man. I thought he was an absolute stud at Stanford. I think he'd be an incredible addition to the XFL, and I think he'd be a heck of a football player. Guy, extremely productive at Stanford, had a heck of a senior year. And look, the Chicago Bears keep giving him a chance, and he keeps being active and inactive, and means he can still play at the NFL level. And then if he was in the XFL, at least it'd be kind of consistent playing time. So I think he'd be a great addition to the XFL. So I'm with you on that one, Riley. I like that one a lot.
So the guy who kind of caught my eye and who I thought could replace him, and I don't think he's going to get drafted in the NFL, and if he does, he's going to be an extremely late pick. But I really like Tanner Muse from Clemson. The guy is a safety, but he's moving to outside linebacker in the NFL. He's very fluid. He's very athletic. And unfortunately, he's not athletic enough to play in the secondary and the professional level. But you know another guy who got moved from safety to linebacker? Brian Urlacher. So
That's a good one.
Give Tanner Muse an opportunity to get some reps at the professional level. Get him to learn the position, and let him not have to worry about making too many mistakes because he might get benched or might get cut. But the guy runs a sub 4.5. He's got size. He's 6'3", 227. He's a little undersized, but Demarkus Gates is the same size too. He's 6'3", 229. So I think Tanner Muse with the position change is going to be a very undervalued guy in this draft who could be a perfect guy to fit in the XFL.
Michael Freeman in the
I like
chat
that, Kenny. I think another guy from the
go ahead, Pastel.
Go around. Okay, yeah. So a guy from the college ranks, looking at somebody named Christian Rector from USC. He's a defensive end, but he can also play that linebacker spot as well. He's 6'4", is 275 pounds. Wasn't very productive at all last year at USC, but the year before that, he had 9 tackles for loss. He had almost 5 sacks, 48 tackles. Very, very, very productive. And I wonder if a guy like that might get lost for having a very unproductive year, but has a skill set, and to go into the XFL and dominate just like Demarkus Gates.
I wonder why Pastel likes these guys that aren't productive.
Wow.
Well, they were productive at one thing. Like the potential
at one
there.
point. No, I get what you're saying.
At one point. It's the consistency with all these guys.
Yeah. I'm interested to see. Oh, Michael Freeman mentioned Manti Teo. Michael, did you watch our segment that we just put out the other day of our top 10 NFL players that could rehab their career in the XFL? If you guys haven't checked that out, make sure you visit our YouTube page and check that video out. Manti Teo, should I spoil it? He's on the list. I'm not going to tell you what number he is, but he's definitely on the list. And a guy, he's been injury prone. We talked about blown Achilles. He had one. So it's very tough to say if you're ever the same player coming back from an injury like that. But he is definitely a guy that could fill in that void from the NFL ranks for sure. So there it is. There's our guys that we think could come in and replace guys that are moving on. And like I said, we're probably going to have to revisit this later on in the coming months.
After the draft's probably a really good one.
Yeah, as more movement happens with XFL players making their way to the NFL, because it's going to happen. I mean, XFL fans, this is the reality of things. Like, XFL players are going to be jumping to the NFL, and you can't really blame them for it because the money is just so much better in the NFL. There are guys that have particular situations where it may benefit them to stay in the XFL, but I think on this show we've talked to quite a few players, and the overall majority of them, the goal is to play in the NFL. So I think it's going to be a reality until we can get a better TV deal for the XFL, and really that's kind of where you can raise salaries of players to. I don't think it will ever compete with the NFL, but at least make them more competitive and enticing, maybe is the word, to get guys to stay for multiple years. So the XFL scouting department has done a great job in this first year, and they're going to have to continue to do a great job to find guys coming out of college that may, they may be under the radar, kind of like some of the guys Pastel has talked about, or guys that are on the back end of their careers in the NFL, or guys that have been on practice squads. I mean, we've seen it with PJ Walker, guys. Just because you're on a practice squad does not mean you can't play football. It just means you haven't had the opportunity. It's so hard to get reps and get get into game action when you're at that level. There's so much competition that you need a league like the XFL to be able to get that film on tape for teams to see what you can do. And we've seen how it's worked out so far for these guys that we just mentioned, and it's going to continue to work out for guys moving forward. And it's quite frankly a great sign for the XFL to bring in high quality players.
Absolutely. And if I may interject here for a second, I got a very awesome text just now, and I'd like for Pastel to answer this question. It's a very special question
Go.
from a Mr. Pastel. And he texted me. He goes, hey, do you think Tom Bukowski of Notre Dame could play in the XFL? So I'm going to let you, Pastel to Pastel, I'm going to let you answer that question, Brandon. And remember, your dad is watching right now, so.
Yeah, I can't knock on Tom Bukowski because he would knock me out, right? He was the second-round pick out of Notre Dame that went into like professional boxing. Yep. So, yes, I do think he could play in the XFL, and I would not say otherwise for the sake of my life.
Good boy.
Before I would answer that, I would ask Tom Bukowski if he would like to play in the XFL before I would have an opinion on if he could play in the XFL.
I love that. And to wrap this up, a quick story. So we've all known my wife since high school, and Mr. Pastel's dad, has always loved Laura, my wife. Like, I think he always saw his son ending up with Laura. So we always joked, Pastel was one of my groomsmen at the wedding. We always joked that, speak now or forever hold your peace. We always thought Mr. Pastel was going to stand and be like, Brandon, Riley, switch. And we'd just be like, yes, Mr. Pastel, because he is not a man
yes, sir.
to be trifled with. Everyone's saying hi, Mr. Pastel, now in the chat.
I love it.
Oh, my goodness. Now my dad's the fan fave.
Yeah, when I ran your ass over at home plate back in Parks and Rec when we were like 12 years old, I thought your dad was going to come out and spear me.
First of all, you did not run me over. You hit a brick wall.
I totally ran you over.
It was one of the age-old question: what happens when an unstoppable force is an immovable object? That immovable object won that time.
We'll have to go to the tape.
This is where
we'll have to go to the tape.
And the show's off the rails. All right, we're done anyways. It's fine. All right, thanks everybody for joining us tonight on YouTube Live. We hope everyone is out there and staying safe. Keep your social distancing. That word has annoyed the crap out of me, but we got to listen to it if we ever want to see sports again, because, man, it just seems like timelines keep getting more and more extended as we go down the line. But at least, at least we have the NFL draft to look forward to, and guys that are not drafted or drafted late in the draft to kind of take a look at them for XFL purposes. And it'd also be interesting to see where Kenny Robinson goes. I read an article the other day that the Eagles are really liking Kenny Robinson, along with a multiple number of teams. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes, because that will bode very well for the XFL if he gets drafted and drafted high in the NFL draft. So make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at XFL Chalk Talk. If you haven't, please give the video a like. We really appreciate you guys sticking with us, through this COVID-19 craziness and continuing to support the show. So give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. Check us out at bluewirepods.com for the podcast version. We're going to put that up probably here in the next day or two. And you can also find us on any... Go ahead, Gless.
On any I was about to say, find us on any platform.
If you just let me finish, I was getting to it, man.
You know what? You went with the
instead of jumping all over me.
Is he really going to
talk too slow, Riley?
Go ahead, Riley.
Way to take over, Gless. I love it.
Yeah, Gless, just take Riley. I got this. Just take it back. Take it back.
Let Coach Gless go grab a Coke Zero.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm wrapping the show up, because I'm out. I need more. It's been a long night. All right, one more thing. What is funny, in the last video, if you watch our 10 players that could rehab their careers, there were a couple of comments in there like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I heard Riley's kids in the background. You're not pretty sure. You are sure. Those were my kids. I mean, that's life with COVID-19 right now. And living in a house with a 3-year-old and a 10-month-old. I'm going a little stir crazy over here, guys, to be honest with you. This social distancing thing is getting old real quick, so I don't know if I could do this till June or whenever. But yeah, we're all doing the best we can with the situations we have to work with. But thank you all for sticking with us through all of this craziness. Continue to follow us at XFL Chalk Talk. We'll see you next Monday. We're going to be putting out more episodes later this week, so look out for those as well. Thanks, everybody, and have a great week. Really appreciate you following us. Till next time, for Pastel, Glessner, Kenny, I'm Riley. We're XFL Chalk Talk. Thanks, guys. See you next time.
Bye, Dad.